Today is Wednesday, June 27th, 2018. My name is Elissa Kaplan, and it is my honor and privilege today to interview Joachim Herz at his home in Stamford, Connecticut. So, we're about to begin. Good morning.
Good morning, madam.
Please tell us your full name.
Joachim Herz, legally, also known as Joachim in Israel and John in America.
That's it. And what do people usually call you?
John.
John. Okay. Tell us where you were born.
Berlin, Germany.
And when was that?
December 22, 1930.
Quite a time in Germany, right? Tell us a little bit about who were your parents?
My father is Max Herz, born in Bonn, Germany. My mother is Elissa Herz, born in Pyritz, Germany, now Poland. He's a Polak, in other words.
And how did your parents meet? How did they get together from two different places?
My father came from a, I suppose, comfortable home. He was son of an elderly father who lost his wife in the second childbirth. And he traveled, became involved with Zionism early in the game. Was in Palestine in 1913, and as a good German citizen, he went to medical school in 1914. He volunteered for the German army. Well, mid-war they decided, that since he was halfway through medical school, they need a medic, so they stuck him in the medical corps. And my mother wound up after the war, University of Munich, University of Berlin, graduate from medical school, University of Berlin. Circa 1923, I suspect. My mother came from a small town in Pyritz. They moved to Stettin, which is on the Baltic Sea. And I have been there, so you'd know Chechen in Poland today. And she left home at 15, as it was customary in those days. She was the only girl in the family who told the family the hell is you, I'm leaving. And she went to, after 8th grade, which was basically all they got in those days. She went to Haushaltsschule, which means home economics school for a year. And then she went to nursing training. And in 1914, she was finished with the nursing training just to start working for the German Red Cross. And for the next 4 years, she was involved with the German army, treating soldiers and evacuating soldiers from the East Front. Remind me of that, I'll tell you a footnote in my history later on. Anyway, after the war, she went to Berlin, and eventually that's where they met.
And
she was a rebel in a sense that she said, I don't want to stay in Stettin, this is too small for me.
right.
And he said, what's there left for me?
So your parents politically were very loyal German citizens?
My father was up to a point, my mother was not so. My father was pretty much politically on the right. And my mother was one time very leftist, she was stylish, 18, 19 to be leftist. Rosa Luxemburg, if that's a concept to you. Those people were heroes of that generation. Well, it turned out they're false heroes. So, and then we met, and we were born, my brother and myself, and here we are. My brother is dead 20 years, and I'm still around telling the story.
What was your brother's name?
Michael.
So, tell us about your early family life. You were born in 1930, so you were born into a certain kind of world. Tell us about that.
Don't remember much. My parents were my father was fairly comfortable. He was
So tell us, your father was practicing medicine, right?
in Berlin.
In Berlin.
And apparently a fairly comfortable living, but he was still a Zionist at heart and an ardent anti-Nazi. When Hitler was elected in 1933, he said, "You gotta get out. Can't live here." And of course, he followed the Zionist dream. He would go to Palestine and build a Jewish homeland.
Oh, so did he do that? Did he?
Yeah, we moved to Palestine. I grew up in Palestine.
And
The British mandate of Palestine. That's why I learned to love the British.
1933, right? You actually, so
Yeah.
you were only 3 years old, so
Not
you
even.
don't really remember much about Germany.
What I remember about Germany is actually what I learned about Germany in the family after 1959. I visited, there was family from my mother's side, which was not Jewish, you know, we connected and you know, so you learn about things that you never learn otherwise. You speak the language, we spoke German at home, we visited a German house. And there were all these German Jews in Palestine. They were called, in a derogatory way, the Yekis. You know, they wear suits, they had a tie, they polished their shoes, as opposed to the Polacks who came in like slums and behaved like slums. So, you know, it's a conflict. And in fact, I wrote my memoirs as an aside, incomplete, and I called myself the outsider. Why? In Germany we were the Jews, in Palestine we were the Yekis, in America we're still the foreigners. You know, you can live here 60, 70 years, you don't get fully integrated. Don't kid yourself. I didn't grow up on baseball, football, so you know, just an aside, there were different points of view, and you were viewed in different ways as well. You know, the German Jews in Palestine were the middle class. So the poor Polish Jews, they were upper class. The Polish Jews were all socialists, except the old Yishuv, they were not. But you know, there was this friction. Ben-Gurion came from a very leftist orientation. The labor movement was very strong. The labor movement dominated really the Jewish community in Palestine. My father was very much to the right, if you ever heard of Beitar, Jabotinsky, his type of orientation.
Going back to 1933, where did you move in Palestine? How did you get there?
By ship? What do you think, we flew?
I think you probably walked. Yeah, okay, so. And you landed in
Haifa. We left Marseille, and we landed in Haifa, and the ship was called Marietta Pasha. What a memory, right?
And where did you live in Israel?
In Haifa.
Were there people there your parents knew, or?
We're all Jews, we can live in Palestine, we built Greenland, and there was some interference. And there we built white thing. We'll go back. Now, so here was my father. Their family had some money and got together. They needed to get the money out. They wouldn't leave Germany without their money and with possessions. And they got together with 4 other German Jews from Berlin, and they formed a shipping company. The first Jewish shipping company to serve, they thought, to serve Palestine. The shipping company was called Oship, Orient Shipping Company. And they brought 2 Rhine steamers, barges, motorized barges, put a new front end and a tail end, and had 2 ships called Dora and what's the word? Carola, Dora and Carola. And they sailed to Germany, from Germany to Haifa. Haifa was the home port. And I guess they forced the British to create a flag for Palestine, which was a Union Jack, red background. In the corner there was the English flag, and then a big sign Palestine.
Because they needed it for the ship.
Yeah, because the ship, funny, was the first Jewish ship traveling under the swastika. What? I have a picture. Funny to laugh about.
It's so ironic.
Ironic. It's a joke, an old joke.
There it is.
Little closer.
Here's a picture of it.
We're going to do that in a minute.
Here are the partners, owners, good yekas. You know what yeka means?
I do.
Yehudik shehavana. The Polish Jews call the German Jews yekas. And so, the idea was good, and that's how we got to Haifa. The execution was bad, because they knew nothing about the shipping business, and knew even less about the Orient, and how you do business with the Greek gangsters and the Arab gangsters. This was not Europe. Within a year and a half, they were broke. To sell the ships, lost a lot of money. And apparently there was something left over, because my father invested it in a pioneering light-rich company in Haifa. And actually that investment kept us afloat economically. A very good investment, whereas the first was a total failure, a disaster. It has some funny parts to it, a Jewish ship with a swastika. Anyways, that's the way we got to Haifa. And that's, it begot something else. Because of Oship, they formed with another group of local investors, the old Yeshivists, they used to call them, a company, the Light-Rich Company, for Haifa. And my father was one of the investors, and that's the company that he was a member of the board, and a small company, don't get this confused with American scale, but it was a source of income because as a doctor you could make a living over there. Anyways, that's sort of how we got the money out of Germany, some money, and how we wound up in Haifa.
What was, when you were a small child, what did Palestine look like? What was your house like? What was your living space like?
Miserable. By American standards. Haifa didn't even have paved roads, the main highway, there's a Balfour Street, have you ever been to Palestine? Haifa? Mm-hmm. The main street of Herz, Herz Street on the Hadar, the middle town, and the street going up. The only thing that was built there was the Technion, Haifa Technical Institute, and it was situated in a park, and we lived in the edge of the park, which that particular edge was also the more active part of town. But the first, initially we lived in small two-bedroom apartments, two-room apartment, what bedroom? There were no bedrooms, living room, that was a foreign concept. And then when my father, when the business went down, he decided to go back to medicine. We moved to a bigger apartment, which by our standards here is also no big deal, but by local standards was a big deal already. It was considered a good apartment. A good apartment consisted of 3 rooms, an office for my father, and we had a nice hallway that could serve as a sitting room. One room that was the parents' room, which was a living room converted at night to a parent bedroom, and there was another room, it was a kids' room where everything was stored, and we slept at night. And the kitchen, it was very primitive, but compared to many other people, it was not that bad. But you have to realize an environment in which, give you an idea, a telephone was the mark of wealth. Wow. That family has a telephone. My father was a doctor, so eventually got a telephone, And the number was 88, which tells you how many telephones there were in Haifa. And things like icebox, We were delivered during the week. The iceman came along, chop, 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 give you a piece of ice, and we schlepped it upstairs, and you had your stuff cool. On the weekend and Shabbat, we had to go down and to the ice store and pick up a load of ice before we went to the beach, which was the main activity in Haifa. And but it was a very different, you know, the roads weren't paved. They were paved very rapidly, actually, if you think back in terms from 1933, 34 to 1938 was a major upheaval. In terms of, you know, suddenly there was a town there were paved roads, there were houses, and so forth. And the German Jews had a lot to do with it, you know. They were, yes, they were, but damn it, there was order and discipline. And they started new industries, and they started businesses to the extent they had the means to do so. And whereas the socialists could scream their head off about, you know, socialism will win, the fact of the matter is that the Yakis, who were the entrepreneurs, and there's the old issue, you know, like this Leipzig company that my father was part of, a God sent for us. So, you know, in terms of, you live primitively by American standards. If you had a refrigerator, wow, electric refrigerator. And if you had a car, cars or something. You hitchhiked or you walked everywhere. The place was relatively small. I mean, we could walk to school 1 kilometer away, we walked to the beach, was it 5 kilometers away, but we saved 10 cents, you know.
So it's down the hill.
Down the hill by the water, you know, to Bad Galil, if you know where it is.
Right.
So, you know, a completely different lifestyle than it is here.
Was your mother able to help your father? Was she still practicing her nursing?
She helped my father in Germany in the practice, and there was no practice in Palestine. There were more doctors than customers. Everybody was her doctor. You know, I mean, especially when there's this old joke about this expert in diesel things, you know. Diesel engine, he could identify an engine from afar. So he goes to visit construction sites, you know, somewhere in Palestine, and he hears from a distance. Oh, that's MAN 300. Sure? Absolutely. They go there and they see all the German Jews, everybody with a doctor's degree, handing the buckets of cement. Bittchen Doctor, Dankeschön Doctor, Bittchen Doctor, Dankeschön Doctor, Bittchen Doctor, Dankeschön Doctor, you know. Gallows humor, but that's what it was.
That's right. Tell us about going to school, you and your brother as a child. What was school like in Palestine?
Very uneven. Not very uneven also. Well, this problem still persists today to a large extent. Many of us went to the same kindergarten. I have a friend in Washington who we know, the family know each other over 100 years. We went to the same kindergarten in Haifa, you know, he lives in Washington today. And the schools were very mixed. There was an elementary school which was run by the Histadrut, by the labor organization. And there was a big class, there were 40, 45 kids in class. They were well behaved, generally speaking. They weren't crap that you have today here, you know. I stayed there for 3 years, and my father said, this is never. So he put us into a middle school run by some German pedagogues. Well, that school was a high school, a mixed bag, in a matter of fact. He had some very good teachers and terrible teachers. You know, for instance, I wasn't good at math. Part of it was my problem. But part of it was also the teacher. I had a genius, Mr. Berezovsky. You know, he had no tolerance for idiots like me. And here my friend who was Russian, and they knew the family. And we were sitting in a corner hiding. God forbid he would call us. Because if you didn't answer right, it was come back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. God forbid to come back to school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, you know, he was a very excellent teacher for bright people. It wasn't good for me. Now, there was a biology teacher. She was a horse's ass. She was an idiot. A certified idiot. Shouldn't have been teaching. Underlying all of this was something else. There were no printed textbooks. It isn't that you could go home and say, well, I didn't get it. I'll read it in a book, read up on it. There were no textbooks in Hebrew. So everything was new. So that was, when I think back, a terrible situation. The teachers were a mixed bag, and there were no textbooks, so you could study on your own. Facilities were crammed. But that's what you had. So in the 9th grade, my father took us out of this school, and I went to a technical high school attached to the Technion. It was, are you familiar with Brooklyn Polytech in Brooklyn? They had a similar a technical high school, Brooklyn Polytechnical High School. This is the same thing. It was attached to the Technion in Haifa. And there was a high school, you know, you went there from 9th grade through 12th grade. In the morning you went to class, and in the afternoon you spent 4 hours in a shop, and each semester they flipped back and forth. It was a long 9-hour day. It was not bad, but also uneven. I mean, excellent teachers. German Jews taught Professor Ollendorf, a well-known professor, electrical engineer. A world-known heroes teaching in little jerks like us. You know, I mean, this was just too much of a gap.
And
So,
you came out of there learning how to do
become a
what?
machinist. I mean, call it, I guess the word today would be mechanical trades. Mechanical, yeah, you know, how to operate a lathe, how to weld, blacksmith shop, what do you call it?
Smith?
Blacksmith shop, you know, welding, all the machine tools that you encounter in the machine shop. It was the same model like Brooklyn Polytech High School here. Strangely enough, many of my friends later on that I made in New York came from the same environment. Coincidence? Most likely. I mean, it wasn't by choice, but it just turned out to be that way. So, my brother went to an English school, to a mission school, St. Luke's High School in Haifa. And he prepared, you know, determination there was a matriculation examination. And when you finished the matriculation examination, you were ready for university in England. At one point he thought he might want to be a dentist. My father thought he should be a dentist, let's put it this way. My brother was quite different from me. In temperament, he was older, I was more robust, you know, good time Charlie. Wine, women and song, not quite. There was no song, there was song, but there was no wine. But you know, so he worked there. He was actually quite, not terribly upset about leaving Palestine. I was. He lost his Zionist zeal, if there ever was one. So I wouldn't blame this school selection. The school of St. Luke's was a school, like we know it here. It had English texts, you know, I'm saying, of Herz, which you found so missing when you went to a Hebrew school. There was no text, there was nothing. You know, it was, you were taught as if you were a university student. Well, you weren't a university student, you were an 8-9 grade kid. And so, you know, how was education? A mixed bag, very mixed bag.
That's a good way to describe it. Let me take you back to your parents' home in Germany and then in Palestine. What was your parents' view of religious life?
My father abandoned religion. He was brought up very orthodox. Very orthodox. And that didn't sit well with him. And after the Second World War, after the First World War, he said, there's no God. It cannot be. And my mother had no religious conviction of any sort either. You know, these were the days where religion didn't matter. In the roaring 20s in Berlin, after a lost war, after an inflation, after an economic explosion that turned out to be a fiasco in the end. By 1930, the Nazis came to power because everything went kaput.
Right. So, you no life cycle events in your family, no Jewish holidays.
There is one big problem. In Palestine, You were not Jewish by religion, you were Jewish by nationality. And to this day I hold this point of view. You didn't have to be, you had a bar mitzvah at home, not in a synagogue. There were 10 people, you know, invited, and there was a friend of ours who was a rabbi. He taught me what I needed to know. And the minions sat around and heard me read my chapter and the story.
Did you give a little speech?
No, I was too young to know what the hell it was all about.
And your mother made food and
Yeah, there
drinks
was a
and...
family we were very close with. Also a German family, German-Jewish family, Dr. Levy. He was a chief engineer for Palestine Electric Company. Mr. Rutenberg had a big mouth. He was the promoter. The guy who built it was Gustav Levy. And they had no children, so we were sort of, you know, we were sort of the children. So his mother was there, and she worked with the wife and my mother, and you know, he didn't go out and have somebody cater it to you. You did it alone, and you know, everybody brought something, and it was a very uplifting experience in the sense that here everything is so commercial. You know, I have more than you. Look at my bar mitzvah; it was better than your bar mitzvah. I had 2,000 people. Well, you had only 1,000. What are you talking about? You know, this doesn't exist. So when you say, well, you're Jewish. You were Jewish by nationality, not by religion. It was a very different, and it holds me to this day. I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist.
So
you know.
in Haifa...
Haifa was the Red City.
And what was Shabbat like in Haifa? Did things close down?
Shabbat? Of course.
Everything closed
down. Not very long. From buses started to run at 2:30 in the afternoon. But everybody, you know, Friday was half a day, and everybody rushed to the beach at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday because, you know, that's what there is. Beaches was wonderful in the summer. What else are you going to do? No, it was gorgeous. I mean, the beaches were gorgeous. So everybody rushed to the beach. Sunday, Saturday, I was in a youth group called Zvulun. It was a Sea Scout organization, ostensibly. There was, in later stages, it had a very different purpose, to train people, you know, to handle boats and mapilim and all that story. But it was a great event for us kids. You know, Haifa had a wonderful port and a wonderful weather. And the first thing you did Saturday morning, and when you got the ice, from the ice store, you rushed down to the beach, to the port or to the beach, and there you met the gang. And we had boats, and we'd go sailing in Haifa port, and out to the bay, and down the coast a little bit, if it was an overnight trip. And that was Saturday. We came back in the afternoon, showered, shaved, took a rest, and went to the movies. Not if we could get tickets. We went there to ogle the girls, look at the girls, you know. Yes, all of 14, 15, 16.
Wow. So this brings us you were about 18 in 1948. Tell us about...
No, I came in 47.
Oh, you came here. Oh, okay. All right, so tell us about your teen years in Israel, and then you say you left Israel. Tell us about that.
Palestine.
Palestine.
Not Israel.
Palestine.
During the war, 2 war years, 42, 43, my father started to make a decent living because Haifa port was a staging area for the invasion of Europe. So we had a lot of American ships and supplies being sent into Haifa. And all these ships needed attention, and my father had a blooming practice for a couple of years. And after that, everything went kaput. So let's look at Israel during the war. 1939, the British had a white paper prohibiting immigration and sale of land to the Jews in Palestine, limiting it to 100,000 additional immigrants, and you can't buy your land, which didn't fit well with the Jewish community, just in time when we needed land and a place for the refugees to go, and there was a fairly strong anti-British sentiment. My father was never far from it because he was a revisionist in Beitar, They had no great use for the British to begin with, even though he had personal friends who were British, patients and so forth. But on a policy matter, he couldn't stand the British. But the first war, you know, the warriors, Italy, it didn't feel very much, but when the Italians went into war, entered the war, May 1940, the first thing we knew, we had the Italian Air Force visit us and bomb the refineries in Haifa. They were not very good bombers, but it was very impressive because it hit the refinery and it was burning at night, the oil tanks, not the refinery that matters, but that's Italian. You know, got used to it. Not nice, but that's the way it is. It was war. After Germany fell, you know, the Germans moved into Greece, and they tried to move into, and Vichy France was cooperating with the Germans, and Germans tried to move from Crete and from Rhodos, if you know where they are, started to move Air Force units to Syria. And they started to bomb Haifa port, which was an important point, you know, in 1941. The British were being beaten badly in the Western Desert by Rommel. The British had no plan to speak of. The Germans thought maybe we can come in from the north through Syria. They started to bomb the facilities in Haifa. So we had a lively exchange, nightly visits by the Luftwaffe for a short while. And they made a hell of a noise. And they were, however, not more effective because they tried to bomb British facilities and the port and the ships. And the problem with Haifa was, it is a horseshoe, it's a bay. And the port is on the side of the mountain. So if you want to hit the port, you've got to fly over the mountain and then drop your bombs. Very short distance. The chances of hitting things are not good. And the British had their Air Force, the anti-aircraft guns on the top of the mountain. So there was an approach, but not very effective. They always overshot. Or they came in from the sea, in which they could be spotted by the anti-aircraft guns as they approached. So that was not a easy target to hit. So there was a lot of thunder and noise and what have you. I remember we had a 4-hour attack, you know. Shelters weren't adequate, but we were part of the shelter community in the next building next door, which was a big concrete building. And we went over there at about 12 o'clock in the evening, you know, the siren bailing. We heard these explosions. And I remember my brother and my neighbor and myself said, wow, what's left standing? So as soon as the all clear was given, about 5 o'clock in the morning, we went up to the roof. Surprise, surprise, nothing was hit. What noise, my God! Then we realized it's not so easy to attack Haifa. You can't come in over the sea, and chances of coming in over the mountain are not good either. So then, of course, the Germans found themselves something better to do in Russia, and the Americans entered the war December 41, and the pressure was off. But Haifa was then a staging area for invasion of Europe, you know. They came in through the Suez Canal, you know, supplies, they didn't know. Rommel was still sitting at Mersa Matruh and, you know, Sidi Barani and the Egyptian border. And that's not a good place to stage things, you've got to be further back. So there were 2 good years economically, 42, 43, 44, this all went up.
What did your...
Now, during the war, we were active in the Sea Scouts at the Vulun. And it's very, very enjoyable. I mean, for kids, you know, age 11, 12, 13, 14, you know, it's a big deal. I always look forward to it. You know, I tried to get a job, which I really didn't want, to help my parents who didn't do well, but, you know, I was in the background. There always lurked the opportunity. I'd sneak off to the sea camp, and it was fun. Now, a little bit earlier, a little bit later, my brother went, we were centrally located in Haifa, intersection of 2 main roads, And my brother went to St. Luke's School. And as the boys graduated, they were not necessarily from Haifa, they were from Tiberias. Our place seemed to be a crossroads because it's centrally located. So the boys went from the English school to the auxiliary police, Notrim, which was really a Haganah, a subterfuge for the Haganah. And it was 1944, you know, there was anti-British activity in the Jewish community. They did not like that the British did not do anything to let anybody in. And there was a lot of turmoil. They tried to placate the Jews. I guess it was Churchill by creating Jewish Brigade, tail end of 44. This was the first Jewish fighting unit. And they trained them, and they regretted forming it from the minute they formed it, because it was the background for the Tzahal. Okay? The guys who came out of there were militarily trained and created a problem. In addition to which, the issue was split. You had, on the one hand, the Reds, the Mapai, Ben Gurion, majority, and on the other hand, you had the Jabotinsky crowd, to which my father belonged, and that, of course, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, that split was split into 2. Lehi, the Stern, the Lochamei Cherut Israel, that was the Stern gang, who were saboteurs, provocateurs and saboteurs. Great chaos. And there was Lehi, or the Etzer rather, Ergun Tzvai Leumi, that was, what's his name, sir? He was heading that, what's it? The religious Jew who eventually became, what's his name? He was premier of Israel later on, I think, the state of the life. Anyways, they were more organized in the military. Begin. And it was much more organized. There was a bigger unit.
You're taking me back to my early young Judea days.
yeah, well, it was Begin. And you know, Etzel was much better organized. Not as well organized as the Haganah, and certainly not as big. The Haganah was 40,000, 50,000 members. Begin's group was probably 4,000 or 5,000. Etzel was 1,000. Etzel were provocateurs. The issue was not, on the one hand, he wanted to beat the shit out of the British. On the other hand, he said, this is not the way to do it. But the British didn't help any, you know. They were arrogant, they were stupid. Just to get off the subject for a moment, Palestine was a British mandate. It was not a colony. And they had an obligation to turn it into something independent. The British never had such ideas. For them it was protection for the Suez Canal, you know, they were actually a buffer, and ultimately a oil refinery output from Iraq, you know. If you look at the map, in fact, you can see the sleeve. Well, no, but that's not a natural border. It was created for a reason, to take you from Iraq to Haifa, to a port, to a refinery. Because the British, you know, the British Navy switched to burning oil before World War I, 1912. So, you know, going into the Persian Gulf and getting crude was a pretty difficult job. So I said, hey, while we're at it, let's do this. So, it was very difficult for the British to. The colonial office ran it. Whoever was colonial secretary, it didn't matter. Those these apparatchiks. Okay, they had we had a high commissioner. He was sort of a top dog from the occupation. Revealing myself from a practical point of view. He's the governor. Okay? And where did he come from? Sudan. What a misfit. He loved the Arabs because Sahib, yes sir, Sahib, no sir. Now he is confronted by Jews who are better educated than any Englishman over there, you know, and they want to be addressed as sir. Says, sir, my ass. You are a colonial official here who has no business being here in the first place. What do you want me to have respect for you? You know, I may be working in a ditch during the day, but in the evening I'm still a doctor of philosophy or whatever. No, that was a very stupid English move. And we had some, my father had English clients, you know, police officer Webb, Playboy, big sports car, but they realized this is ridiculous. No, we're kidding. Anyways, that was the background kind of thing, you know. He didn't fit. So, you know, the underground started to grow and you know, realizing that Brits won't do anything for you. And from 1936 to 39, there was a very active Arab rebellion against the British and the Jews. Okay, we went to school in armored cars, and you know, there was constantly attacks on the Yishuv and counterattacks, and you know, some of the British people were actually, for instance, I don't know whether you ever heard of Wedgwood. He was actually the father of the Palmach, and he died in Burma. He was leading behind the line operations.
What was his name?
Wedgwood. And there were the British elements who did not agree with what was on, and Wedgwood was a Bible fanatic, you know, and he went to everywhere with his Bible, and he saw himself, you know, in the steps of biblical figures, but for whatever the reason, they did not agree with the administration. But the administration was a colonial office. Prime ministers come and go. What does it matter? The guys underneath are the same jerks. And then they paid well, you know, police in Palestine, British police were looked up to us. Sahib my ass. But anyways, they made, I don't know, 14, 15 pounds, 18 pounds. It was a lot of money in those days. In London, they'd been working some lousy job for 10, 12 pounds a month. Here they got room and board, uniform and authority, and they got 15 or 18 pounds. It's a big deal. Of course there was a conflict, you know, I mean, unqualified people masquerading as policemen. And when they make statements like there was a big affair in Hebron in 1929, and there was a police officer by the name of Kafarata. He was a Maltese, of course, not even an Englishman. And he made a statement, a lot of Jews were killed, and the Jewish community in Hebron was eliminated in 1929. And he made a statement to the Jews. He said to the Jews, asked him, "Where are you?" He said, "Well, always be here 15 minutes after you're dead." So, you know, if you tell me that, I know what I have to do. And so, you know, this thing grew, young people grew, they said, hey, these guys have colonial intention, they never will clear out of here. Unless we make a ruckus and create a scandal, they won't leave. And of course the Arabs had the same idea. In 1936 to 39, bands roving the country. You know, that's when Wedgwood came in, started to clean up the Gota the night squads, beginning the Palmach. And so that was the environment in which you grew up. Curfew, bombs, during the war, attacks from the air, then the threat from the Italians, from the Germans, and the British. Eventually you become very suspicious, you know. This is not a peaceful environment in which to grow up. And you form opinions.
Let me take you to the 38 to 45 period. What did you hear from relatives and friends back in Europe, back in Germany?
Nothing.
Nothing. So what did you know about what was happening? Or what did your parents suspect?
No, there were rumors that circulated, and the underground published little booklets about the killing camps. There was 42, 43, and I remember reading the first one and said, this can't be it. Well, it was. And then, you know, some refugees started to drift through Turkey. Turkey was neutral, you know, so if you make it to the Turkish line, you could go through Turkey, Syria, and into Palestine, which of course the British tried to prevent. But it didn't work. Some people came through, and slowly but surely it became apparent major things happened. There's a Polish officer, you know, what the hell was his name? Not Jewish, who went several times into the ghetto. He came out, he went to London via Sweden, I don't know how he got there. And he reported to the London Poles, you know, there were two Polish governments, one in London, one in Moscow, and he reported what went on, and nobody believed him, including the Americans here. You know, I flew over Auschwitz, but they didn't bomb the place, so don't tell me I didn't know. Anyways, those things filter through, and if you're a young kid, you can't help but hear it. And you go to a youth organization and you talk about it, you realize these Brits are never going to do anything for you. You better get organized. So the older boys, like my brother, I told you, my classmates, you know, they all wound up in the Haganah. And I was more extreme, so I was tending to the Etzel. And my mother heard that and saw what's going on and said, we are leaving.
Oh, so that was
46, 47. I said, this is...
Your
Each son is going to be...
father wasn't... Your father wasn't alive then?
Yeah, he was alive. He was very
But
much...
your mother had not.
No, my father was very sick. He couldn't earn a living. He was sick. He had a big back injury. And my mother made the decision. She said, this is going to be...
So what did your family do?
Came to America.
And how did that work? How did you get here? I mean, did you
We
have
had relatives in South Jersey. They gave us an affidavit, which we actually didn't need. The German quota was not used for years because all the good Germans went back to Germany. So in those days you had a German, you know, the quota system was still in being. So we had no problem coming here. That was not a problem. Getting transportation in those days was a problem, but we got here anyway. It was not a big deal.
So you were about 17, 18,
16.
16 when you got here. And tell us what life in Jersey was like.
Oy. Let me divide. Let me tell you how I look at my life. I see 4 parts to it. Part number 1 is Germany. 30 to 33. About which I can comment very little except what I heard after 1960, when I visited Germany frequently on business, personally, and so forth. The second part was Palestine. And I said Palestine as opposed to Israel. It was not Israel at the time. That was 33 to 47. Then came America, 47 to today. That divides into 2, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is trying to find my way around. That ended by the time I finished graduate school and started to earn a living. And part 2 is the normal part, winding up here and raising family and children and the problem and finding a job and getting fired and all that routine. You know, but that's normal American life. So I think of interest is part 1, which I can comment only in retrospect. Part 2 we discussed, and part 3 is becoming an American. Okay.
And so tell us about that.
I came here at 16. My father had a cousin in New York, a doctor, and he, my brother and myself arrived, didn't know what to do with us. He shoved us off 2 days later to the farm that an uncle, cousin, who the hell knows. There were several of these people in Vineland, New Jersey. Vineland was somewhere between Vineland and Millville, actually, Bridgeport. And we arrived there. How much time do we have?
As much as you like. Would you
So-
like a break or we?
No,
yeah.
I can talk for hours. It's the only thing I can do these days. Anyways, I arrived in Vineland, speaking broken English. Didn't know what to do. So my father's cousin stuck me into the high school. Now I was a senior in Palestine. Here they stuck me in a junior class. Okay. My English was horrible, but my knowledge of math, physics, history was on par with everything they knew, and then some. With no help, no understanding whatsoever for foreign students. In New York, you would have gotten some help, you know. Several servants in the boonies of New Jersey, you know, the sticks. And very discouraging, and eventually, but you know, I knew I have to get a high school equivalent. Oh, so the first year, the second year, nobody helped me. In the beginning, I was there for about a half a year. The second year, because of my English, they put me in the freshman class. I said, screw you, I'm quitting, hell with you. Hell with you. So my family had bought a small chicken farm there because that was a thing to do. And you could earn a very modest living, it's not exciting. So my father was very severely handicapped. So I built up the farm, you know, I would pay with the chicken coops and extended the ranches and so forth. And eventually I said, hey, I gotta finish this, I gotta get out. So I went to New York, see. My brother was in the city at the time, and I joined him, and I met some other people in the city, and we stayed there. Some of these people became friends, you know, for life. One of these people, by the name of Fred Kuhner, of German extraction, sort of was his younger brother in the end. He was from Worcester, Massachusetts. He was going to NYU graduate school, that's where he met my brother. And they roomed in the Y, so I sort of joined the group. And Fred and I became lifelong friends. And he sort of tried to help me. I decided I got to go to engineering. So I got to get the high school degree at night. And I did that as soon as I got here, went to school at night. Eliminated all the requirements. And by January 1950, I was ready for college, except college wasn't ready for me. I had to find one first. And Fred was instrumental in getting me into Worcester Tech. He was from Worcester, Mass. And his father was the chief engineer for an engineering company there. And you know, so after that, we sort of remained there. I was his younger brother in some respects, which he never had. My brother didn't last in NYU. He went to agricultural school. My father thought maybe we'd buy a bigger commercial farm. We can manage it. But mine passed away. My father was very sick. And he came here. Really, the reason he came was, number one, he was sick. He couldn't work. He had a severe back problem. And he had hoped, nobody could help him in Palestine. He had hoped that there would be somebody here. He did not work. And by that time, you know, the state was created in Israel. We had nowhere to go back to. My brother was here, and we wound up in the army. And my mother was by herself, a widow, and what do we do now? You know, by the time we sorted all things out, I finished college. And my mother got back.
Where did you go?
I did my engineering work at the Worcester Polytechnic Institute, Massachusetts, WPI. And so I came out. What to do? Where to go? No idea. Nobody in the family had ever had a kid going to college. All the people in the late 50s, 60s, they didn't know diddly about schools, about college, about career paths, where to go, where not to go, what to do, and not to do. They were naive. I mean, they were immigrants, you know, in their late 40s and late 50s. So I took a job and I went to Detroit. I wanted to see America, and good Lord, what the place. Medina Finsters, you say in Yiddish. The land of darkness. And I went to work in a steel mill, and then in automotive engineering, and I said, enough is enough. You know, huge mills and huge industrial operations. What's a nice Jewish boy doing in this place? I felt no anti-Semitism or anything of that sort. Nobody knew I was Jewish. I didn't particularly look Jewish or act Jewish, you know. But I said, this is ridiculous. This is like I went to school for this. So I went to New York and said, I'm not the greatest engineer. Let me study business. I came to New York, took the first well-paying job I could, went to school at night to NYU, working towards an MBA. Now I was home. I could take care of my mother who lived here, who was not in good shape. She was working, she was a nurse by training, but she worked privately at night, you know. And luckily for her, she ran into some old friends from Berlin who lived, Elissa, she lived, she found a rent-controlled apartment for my mother just a block down the way. It was a godsend because they got along wonderfully. And she helped my mother integrate back into the refugee society of New York. But it was a great step. But by the way, as a side effect. I told him my mother was in Russia as a nurse. One of these trips evacuating wounded German soldiers from Russia, she got friendly with one of the soldiers, brought her some coffee and all. They chit-chat. 3 days later, the great romance was over. 10 years later, or 12 years later, she sits in Berlin with this woman, Alice, who got her the apartment in Jackson Heights. And they leave through the album, and there's this soldier, picture of the soldier. She says, Alice, who is this? I know him. That's my brother Victor.
Oh. Oh.
And then in 1958, we met in Alice's apartment. Victor, his wife and his son, my mother and 2 boys, and Alice and her boy. Footnote of history, but isn't that a funny story, huh?
Lovely coincidence in small world.
Small world, right. Anyway, so the trouble was really finding what I want to do. And in America, there was nobody in the family who knew which way was up. Certainly not in industry, not in business. So I eventually wound up with the utility company, American Electric Power, and I did mechanical engineering work. And the first time I did some project work. I was project engineer on a big rebuild program. I enjoyed it, but it didn't pay anything. Too bad the location was behind the black church downtown, around the corner from Wall Street. And many of the students in my MBA program worked on Wall Street. When I found out what they were making, what I was making, I said, I must be an idiot. What am I doing here? So eventually I was so fed up with everything. And I finished my master's degree, I quit, and I went to Europe for nearly a year. That was before that was commonly done. And I bought a car, I traveled Europe, and I bought. So my knowledge of Europe begins really...
These were the 1950s?
1959.
Oh, that's what you said.
Later part of 59, I was in Europe. I bought a Volkswagen, and we traveled in Scandinavia, and we stayed in student hostels, youth hostels, cheap hotels, bordellos if need be, you know, and so on.
And of course you were fluent in German. And
I was fluent in German, which of course didn't hurt in Germany. I had a strong dollar before the dollar depreciated, you know, so my brother was there on the GI Bill, ostensibly going to school, like hell he was going to school. Having a ball, you know. The GA Bill, the Germans paid you if you returned to Germany because they wanted to make up for the losses. So they gave you $5,000 a one-time payment, 5,000 marks, and they gave you 6,000 marks if you came back. So I said, I'll grab that, what it's worth. And my brother became an expert, where to go dancing, where to go swimming, where to go chase the broads, you know, that was his element. And he extended that as long as he could. And that was really, I said, that was the end of my phase 1 Americanization. Finally came back and said, okay, a couple of degrees, I speak the language, I'm international. But nobody wanted to hear that in those days. Be an engineer or be a businessman. Today they'll kiss you on all 4 cheeks if you come in with both. But then, you have to make up your mind anyway. So then I drifted from engineering into market research, product planning, corporate development, marketing management, eventually being president and CEO of a manufacturing company here in Connecticut.
so that's how you got to Connecticut?
No, I got to Connecticut, I worked for Philips. And Philips wanted to move out of New York. Time frame 72, 73, 1972, 73. And you know, my kids were, I had a rent-controlled apartment next to my mother's. Gorgeous apartment in Jackson Heights, Queens. So we had 2 apartments, one for my mother and one for myself, but it was too small for us. And the schools were in the... He was in fact so good that my wife's mother came over from Germany and took care of my mother who was senile. It was such an ideal, you know, the old ladies had one apartment and we had the other apartment. It was wonderful. They go to the playground, they knew everybody on their playground. But, you know, the kids grow up and you gotta go to school. You can't go to real schools.
Well, before, so how did you meet your wife?
The only German dance I ever went to. My brother and a Latino friend, Frankie, they used to know every Friday night where there was a dance. And I was working on my MBA work, you know, and all kinds of other things. And John, you should have been there. Well, eventually I went with her, and I got there. Wall-to-wall men. Where are the women? Anyways, one time they dragged me to a dance, and I met my wife.
And that was in New York.
No, in Franklin Square, Long Island. They knew where to go every Friday, every weekend they had planned. But they to each their own.
And her name is Elissa.
Favreau. Was Favreau. Huguenot French. Yeah. So, here we are, 50-some odd years later.
And you have children?
Yeah, 3 children.
And what are their names?
Miriam, the son you saw here, Alexander, and David, who lives in Israel. Will be here next week with my 3 grandsons of the 4. And Dalia, she is living in New York. She's a doctor. Hell-raising kid. Second career. First career was in fashion. What a switch, huh?
They don't seem connected, but I'm sure they are.
No, when she realized that the fashion business is nothing like me, yes. She came on. I had a lot of problems. I couldn't see eye to eye. He was stubborn as an old man. So eventually she came in one day and she said, I'm going to study medicine. Will you support me? I said, enough is in Shiraz. I will. On one condition. I don't fail. First test you failed. Well, she went to Tel Aviv University, studied medicine. She came back here and she went to Worcester of all places, wound up doing her residency there at UMass. And she had a good experience. She liked it. I said, what a long shot, you know. I go to Worcester, I never heard of Worcester before. She comes back and all the places to wind up with UMass. Okay, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, she lives in a city. She's matured a little bit. She's still a little wild, but that's the way it is.
So, none of your children, no one in your family wanted to go back to Germany after your trip, right? So, how did your children end up, how did they feel about Israel? And how do you feel about about Israel today?
At heart, I'm still an Israeli. Yeah, that's not kidding anybody. Be so, but that's in effect. The first thing I do is turn on the news to see what's going on in Israel. Why? Because my son is there, and my grandson is in the IDF, and there are 3 other kids in line to go into the military. They're going to be here next week, so, you know, it's not a question, it's a state of mind.
And your son lives in Haifa?
No, he lives in Bet Rimon, north of Nazareth, and he walks in the footsteps of Jesus. No, he's very religious, Orthodox. How can you believe that?
I was going to say, your parents are be quite surprised.
He married an Orthodox woman, raised 4 Orthodox sons, and don't do this, don't do that. I mean, next week, if you came here next week, this would be a different household. You know, kosher stuff here, kosher stuff there, don't touch this, don't touch that. I only pay rent here, that's all. But anyways, of course I love them.
I was going to say, you're going to love every minute with those grandchildren.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it because I don't think I'll be around that much longer.
Oh, don't say that.
No, it's a fact, you know. Anyway, so it gives you some idea. So my life, phase 3 is, you know, America Part 1. Just trying to find myself there. Which was quite difficult, and I suppose not different from any other person coming here. I wasted a lot of time, I changed a lot of jobs. I'm not the most obedient, subservient kind of a guy, you know. I have a big mouth and I hit back, and that's not good. I'm not a political animal.
Could you tell us a little more about your career at Philips? What the company was like and what
A
the...
Dutch company, owned by the Dutch, run for the Dutch, and we the natives, welcome to work here. And then I went to work for the German company, Siemens. And they never accepted the fact that I was not German. I told them I'm Jewish. Nonsense. You know, I could not accept the fact that I was considered myself Jewish. In their eyes, I was German. No two ways about it. With a name like Joachim and what do you mean you're not German? It's strange. It's a German civil service. They were very nice to me, by the way. You know, because of political upheavals in Munich, I lost my job, but you know, I did a hell of a good job, I thought, for them. I'm building up an organization here, but c'est la vie, as the French say. C'est la guerre.
And Philips and Siemens were both here in Connecticut, right?
No, both in Philips was in New York City, and I worked for them for 7 years or so. Did some very interesting work off and on, but it was a crazy company in terms of what I think of today. And Siemens was equally crazy, you know, big European company. They didn't realize that America is not Germany. And after that, hopped around from company to company, not with great success. Eventually I wound up here. I came here because of Philips, but Philips never moved. Siemens was in New Jersey, South Jersey. I used to commute from here to Elissa, New Jersey, 70 miles each way.
Ooh. When did you come to Fairfield County, to Stamford?
December 14, 1972.
Okay. And you moved in here, in this house?
We stay here only 1 year and move out. Well, 44 years later, we're still here. The only good thing about this place is the porch. And we're close to school. The kids could walk here and they go to school.
Oh, yeah, beautiful. Great school.
It's great. So, you know, in those days there were still some kids in the neighborhood, and they'll walk down together and come back, and everybody knew everybody else. It's changed, you know. But the house is still in a good location. You know, we can get to shopping in 1.5 miles. Old Greenwich, Stamford Railroad Station is 3 miles away. We are halfway between the Parkway and I-95. It can't be any better. In fact, I tell people, you know, when we were looking for a house here, I was on Den Road, which isn't exactly very far away. And I told my wife, there's a house here I want you to see. And she looked at me and she said, you're crazy. You're traveling, you're all over the place, you're never home, and you want me and the sweet children to live here? Den Road today, you're kidding, it's almost downtown. Almost, it isn't, but you know, that's what's... It's the mindset. Anyways, so we've been here. I said, eventually I said, look, one home port, I'll ship out on any ship, but we stay. Kids go to school, you know. I didn't know anybody here until we retired eventually. I lived here for 30 years. My wife knew everybody here, you know, she with everybody and his brother, you know, she knows the neighbors and everything. She knows the whole town. I don't know from nothing. Didn't know nothing.
So you're now retired, and are you involved in Stamford in anything here?
Other than the senior group, not really. You know, it's kind of. I was involved with. There was a senior group at JCC up there, and they had a senior group, and it just fell apart. Not enough people. Very different, you know, also very different backgrounds. Our local scene's completely different than you would. I mean, you were born here, you lived here, to you this is hope.
You're much younger than I am.
Huh?
You're much younger than I am.
How old are you?
I'm a year older than you.
Oh, no. But you always stayed here, see? I was in very good shape until 4 years ago. He meets the pact. I had an open heart surgery, quadruple bypass. And since then everything has gone downhill. I used to, even a year ago, I was still swimming 1/2 mile out in a big pond. But it's over.
So, what advice do you give to your children and grandchildren?
I don't know. The world has changed, even Israel, you know. Today, for instance, our advice, be a good Jew. First of all, you have a family, okay? You have to remember you're part of a family and you have to take care of the family. My son is the next in line, then comes my next in line, Yaakov, the oldest boy. And when they're going to be here, I'm going to tell them, you hang together. That's tribal custom, if you wish. But it has to be that way, okay? Number one. That's important. Number two, you must get educated. I must give you my oldest son, for instance, oldest grandson, is in the army. He's doing computer work, otherwise known as intelligence work. And he's in for 4 years. And of course, they all have dual citizenship. So I said, Yaakov, you want to come back and study here? I said, no. We have schools here just as good as anything you have there. And he's right. I mean, you know, he puts it this way. You know, in America, you go to college to grow up. In Israel, you go to the army to grow up. Then you go to college. So there's a big difference. He took he volunteered for a program of 4 years instead of 2.5 years. I think when he comes out of it, he's got about 2 years of college behind him in terms of sciences and so forth. So it's a completely different point of view. Number two is this: the kids who don't have who are socially inept? What do you call them?
Autistic.
Autistic. I love him. He's a goofy kid. He has a mind that's mind-boggling. And my wife wants to schlep him over here to put him in school. I said, oh, don't be so sure. I think he wants to go in the army with, like his brother. They don't want him in the army. Except the Israelis are not completely stupid. They take these guys that are misfits and they put them into special units. They can see things and, you know, patterns on the computer and things that we don't even think about. You know, I mean, then there was a book here about Germany. Somebody had a travel book about Germany, some smartest Jew boy. I'm fair. I mean, I know he's coming from. I understand the Jewish point of view, but you know, please, a little bit of this. And so I said, Ilan, there's a book here you should read. It's 500 pages. So I gave him the book. Next morning he finished it. 500 pages. If I do 30 minutes, 30 pages an hour, I'm doing well, this guy. So I said, do you remember anything you read? Yeah, generally speaking. I said, do you remember a reference to Club 88? It struck in my mind. You'll see in a minute why. Yeah, it's a club outside of Hamburg. Right. What does 88 stand for? HH. What does HH stand for? Heil Hitler. It's a Nazi club. Motorcycle Nazi club north of Hamburg. Christ. It flips through this in a night and a half, and he remembers these things. I mean, it struck me because, you know, this is subterfuge in modern day Germany. Everybody's drinking beer, they have the motorcycles, you know, but, you know, that's the kind of mindset that we don't comprehend.
Now, what do you see for the future of Israel? You're Israeli at heart. You are Israeli.
Yeah, basically.
What do you see as the future of Israel?
It must survive. Ein brera. There is no choice. Ben-Gurion said, Ein brera. And he said, what will be the result? Yehiyeto. It's not a question of, it's not a choice. It must survive. Yeah, things pleasant in Israel. For the birds, like any other government-oriented society, you know. But my second son, Ilan, just finished high school. He went to a special high school, Bet Sefer Ezori. It's a local regional high school. But they accommodate people like him, strangely enough, and he did a lot. You'll never have that here. And my son David said, you know, you had high school graduation, and you, for the first time I felt you're part of a community. You know, the kids performed and they danced, and you know, you felt you're part of something, not just a citizen. So that was very, very nice. So, you know, those are the kind of things, nuances, you know, shades of meanings. Israel is not paradise by any means. I wish I didn't go, but they're there, so what can I do about it? So, you know, lesson number one, it's important to realize that you're part of the family. That's my mission to the kids. And the pecking order is my son, the oldest son, and then in that order. You better stick together. Nobody's going to stick together for you, stick up for you, number one. Number two, you're Jewish. I mean, in the sense that, not in a religious sense. To them, they're religious, but they're also Israelis, so they're the same situation. It's not a question of, are you, Chiloni is the word in Israel, you know. Are you Chiloni or are you not, you know. I'm Chiloni, they're religious. And so remember who you are. You know, that's very important to me. From there on, do whatever you want. You know, you have responsibility towards mankind in general, and I hope you don't overstep your bounds. And good luck. Live, survive.
I see that you have some books. Are there things you could show us in your scrapbooks?
There's a scrapbook. You leaf through it. There's some things there that might be of interest. There is the big joke.
Right, we got a picture of that.
And that was the boat, one of the two boats. That really is a joke.
Good.
Let's see what else is worthwhile seeing. That's me and the Marietta Pasha, December 1933, with my brother. It doesn't matter.
I was just born. Can I see the picture? Which is you?
Yes. Let's see. These are pictures from Haifa. This is Jerusalem, 1935, at the gate. Bad picture, but it doesn't merit being taken. Picture is not sufficiently good. That's me playing accordion. That's my mother and the both of us. That's my father. You know, these small pictures. That's on Mount Carmel. That's 1947, Pesach 47, outside of Haifa.
This is your whole family.
Yeah. Jesus, you're writing a book too?
Pages.
Holy mackerel.
That's so when you watch the tape, if you want to skip to the next topic.
This is high school pictures, you know, a class picture. This was 2nd grade, this is 7th grade. This was the sea activity, you know, when sailing.
What's this?
That's a trawler that was a yacht converted to a fishing boat, which in effect had other reasons. It wasn't a fishing boat, but I didn't know that at the time. Well, this was a Sea Scout camp, which was always very delightful to attend.
That's over here.
I don't know whether you want to take it, the picture. You might want to take a particular picture and enlarge it, but
Well, what we would like to do, if it would be all right with you, is to have you come to our place and let us scan some of these pictures, and you'll identify them.
see how that works out. This is the technical high school that I went to. This was Gadna. 9th grade, you got involved with early today Noah.
Looks like you're rappelling down a mountain.
This is Haifa port. Again, I'm possessed by the sea, you know. Everything to do with water is me. This was the Technion. And this is our professor. This is another summer camp. You know. This was a summer camp. This is the aftermath of the fire on the beach, you know, celebrated. Tell you that story, that's a good one. This guy who later on became ambassador to Japan from Israel, Nachum, and I were the night watch from about 2 to 4. You know, and every camp had a pole and a flag, you know, you're protecting the flag because the other group might want to steal it, you know. Anyways, we're minding our own business when suddenly we are attacked from the back. My brother among them shoving sand into our mouth, dragging us to the boat, you know, on the beach, rowing the boat out, taking the oars away, and that took us about an hour to get the sand out of here, you know. If you want to know what a mouthful of sand tastes like. It's a one-time experience. Anyways, eventually we cleaned out, you know, and we worked our way back. We took the floor of the boat and we used it as oars, and we rowed back maybe 100 yards to the beach and tied down the boat and popped up. But they're having a big bonfire celebrating how they bamboozled us and got the flag. So that's
the bonfire.
That's the bonfire. Doesn't mean anything to anybody. You can't see much, but that's the. These were demonstrations seen from our house in Haifa against the British, 1939 and ongoing. So these are demonstrations taken from the roof. You see the pictures. These were really just pictures from the. In those days, cigarette boxes had pictures, you know, to build up a series and entice you to buy cigarettes. So these are things that I could have never taken on my own. And then you have here your Plubot Laila. This was first created by Wingate, you know, Colonel Wingate, which I mentioned before. And that's the way people walk around. You know, it's a peaceful society. And these are pictures from that collection. I never had a complete collection. But you see, there was barbed wire, and there were armored tractors, and there was a kafir with every group, and this is the way these things came into being, Choma v'Migdal. Well, you'd go crazy taking pictures of all that.
Well, I think what we're going to do is see if we can borrow it and scan them, if you're willing to share.
I'm willing to share. The only thing is boring. Once you take it apart, I even myself wouldn't know how to put it together. It's not in the best of shape to begin with. Today I would put this together 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, well, we wouldn't take it out of the plastic. We would leave them together.
Let's see what else can I show you here. Well, this was the way we grew up, you know. You're at war. Constabulary training. We got Laila, the night squads went after the Arabs. I think this is interesting. Armored cars, Hebrat Chashmal, which was the electric company. It was an electric company. They went out with armored vehicles to repair the electric lines, and The Arab uprising was primarily not in a city, it was primarily rural. And the British didn't really show friendly. Well, after a while it became a real problem. They had to do something, but that's when Wingate came in with the night squads and trained what became later the Palmach.
Ward.
Hmm?
Ward Wingate.
Ward Wingate, right.
Yeah.
And, you know, you build your own Panzerwagen. The typical Plugatzadeh. War! I think here's something that you find interesting. Well, you can go through this. But here, that's the way a bus driver was equipped. Like the Wild West.
By the side of the road going to Jerusalem, they have the cars, the armored cars.
My cousin was killed there.
Oh, really?
4/22/1948. He was barely 18. I found his grave only recently. Anyway, so, you know, the Yishuv also had, well, this was Chomam and Igdal, you had built fortifications, but there were also pleasant parts, you know, sports, water sports, and so forth. Early Israeli airline my foot, there was again a subterfuge, sports and so forth. You know, and one interesting thing about the British, as much as I despise them, one of our friends was Dr. Yakubi, a good old Yeke, just as disposed towards religion in Israel. He was a Zionist too, but he was a good old German. He went hunting, you know, and there was a hunting club in Haifa, you know, a rifle club, and they were invited by the British to participate, invited to the camp to participate in a big cocktail party. And I remember they took us along, he and his son Hanania, you know. We were welcome in the British barracks. I thought this was amazing. Go figure.
Well, it has been a pleasure
I
to
haven't
chat
finished
with you
yet.
this
I'll show you
morning.
something else.
Wow. And to hear the 4 parts of your life. And we'll want to be talking to you some more.
Oh, talk to me.
Thank you.
And I'll show you something else. Once upon a time, I thought I had some art talent. I didn't follow it. My wife admonishes me ever since. But
Oh, my.
this was when I was still interested in industrial work. You know, this is a foundry, the way I remember it, and all these muscular things. And then I was, you know, at one time, oh, I don't want to take the picture of that.
Oh,
No, there's another picture. Oh, that's when I was very much leftist, you know. Hmm?
You didn't sit on the fence.
No. These are posters, you know. This is when I moved even further to the left.
Oh, my.
This is cute.
This is the Wandering Jew.
Yeah.
Oh, my. Ooh.
I've got to go.
Anyways, you saw this. This is the dream. Piece of land, an idea, weapons to defend it, tools to work it. That's the idea of Israel. Then, of course, I was always a warrior. I thought I was.
Just want your papers.
You want this?
Mm-hmm.
Can you read my handwriting?
Yep.
Anyway.
Decipher it.
You wanted to type it out? No.
I'll do it.
Would you? Sure. That would be helpful if you would.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I told you I was preoccupied
do
with the
want
sea
us-
and ships and all that stuff. That's the ship I worked on. I mentioned it.
No, when you're finished, I don't want to.
Okay.
Forgot to mention it. Before I went to college, I also went to sea for a while, so I could save some money for college. So I was a seaman. Fitted into that.
A worthwhile trip.
And those are
Thanks for
some of
coming.
the impressions of the sea. And you see, I'm too preoccupied with the same topic.
They're they're,
They're lovely.
this is the side of you I didn't know about.
You should frame. Do you have any framed and hung up?
Yeah, downstairs there are 3 or 4. I got to talk to my daughter, the doctor. She has an Arctic
This is
week.
gorgeous.
Yeah, I think so lovely.
And the water is very, very.
Oh, the problem is I never got off the goddamn boats.
You're into the water, right? This is what you wanted. And you just used old scrap paper.
Of course, too cheap.
Joachim. I must
Thanks for
buy-
coming. I really enjoyed your coming. You're part of this now. That's, you know, some game I had, you know, shadows.
Yes, and angles and
Chicago. The idea is somebody else's, but
Mhm.
the colors are mine.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
See you tomorrow, maybe.
Maybe.
Hope
So
so.
say you'll see
Oh,
David
Chicago.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the George Washington Bridge, over which I crossed enough times to drive me nuts. Some more boats. And more boats.
Let's take this one. with the
This is a
buoy.
good one, I like.
This one.
No, this one here, it's different. I worked as a consultant for a while. And I decided there are 2 ways of getting to the top. One is the dumbbell who works for the company, and the other one is a consultant who gets the dollars.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen, later out. This is another one of these poster, industrial poster things. More of the same, you know. Industrial scenes. Boatyard. Another boat. Ship. Import. Anyways, is this what you were looking for?
Absolutely.